This is the Hofstra Radio Alumni Audio Yearbook, and today is February 16th, 2024. My name is Brian McKinley, and today I am joined by Kyle Geesaman, Ryan Mayer, and Victoria Rossi, who are here to talk about their friend Matt Napolitano, who passed away in December of 2023. Thank you all for joining us and doing this tribute to your friend Matt. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
For those of us who didn't know Matt, do you have any words or ideas or quick phrases that might help us get to know him a little bit better? How would you describe Matt?
I think the way I would describe Matt, he was definitely multifaceted and definitely the life of the party, and he was always there to support you and be there and listen and lift you up if you were having a rough time.
Quick-witted doesn't do it justice. He was the sharpest person possibly I ever met. Obviously, he tried to always lighten the mood with a variety of level of jokes, and just incredibly versatile in terms of personality and who he could talk to, what he could speak about, and also just as a person, as a friend, the most loyal, just best friend you could ask for.
Yeah, I'm not going to add too much to all of that because Victoria and Kyle summed him up pretty damn well. But I'm also just going to say he was one of the hardest working people that I've come across in the broadcast industry. There were times in which he was working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, freelancing and broadcasting while holding down a full-time job elsewhere before finally being able to get that full-time broadcasting job. And he just would never stop and was constantly in pursuit of the dream that he had, and in inspiration to me, to say the very least, and I'm sure to Kyle and Victoria as well, in terms of just that work ethic that he showed day in, day out.
Thank you for sharing that. It certainly gives us a quick look at who Matt was, and I'm sure we'll get to know him a little bit better in the next little while. I want to talk about your time together at Hofstra Radio, and you guys told me that you all joined at different times. So I was wondering if you could talk about how you met Matt. And Victoria, you knew Matt before Hofstra Radio. Would you mind talking about when you guys first met?
That's right. We actually went to high school together, and we met when I was about 16. He must have been about 14 in our Model UN class, and immediately hit it off the bat. We had a really big shared passion for history and political science, and had really quickly bonded together. And then I knew he had considered some other colleges, but when he walked through the door of Hofstra one afternoon, and especially into a radio station, it was great to see him, and it was very much like, okay, party's here. We're gonna have a great time in college together, and keep on having a great friendship that we started in high school.
So you went to Hofstra first. Were you in contact once you were in college, or did you know he was coming to Hofstra?
Yeah, we were in contact just because we're both from the same small town, where everybody knows each other, and knew he was considering Hofstra. Wasn't sure. He had let me know that he was coming, but I was like, okay, and then I'll believe it when I see it. You're so smart. I know you're gonna go far. I just wanted to be sure that when he was fully walking in the door that he was gonna be here. And I was thrilled to have a familiar face in college.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Kyle, did you say you two joined at about the same time? Is that right?
Yeah, we were in the same training class. Didn't really interact as much in the training class, but we both got into got into sports right away. And so there was a ton of people in our training class that joined the sports department. I think there was like 10 of us
Mm.
just in our class. Uh, so the way the sports department is kind of laid out, obviously, you have to earn your stripes a little bit, and so the rookies, so to speak, kind of bond together, and so it kind of started that way. um he liked to joke. Ironically, he thought that I didn't like him
Mm.
at first. I still to this day, maybe he's right, and I just forget. Uh, but I genuinely don't remember that. But obviously, I think over time, with the way, like I said, the sports department works, you kind of there's so many broadcasts, and as you're trying to learn and develop as a broadcaster, there's a lot of downtime, and so you do get to know one another and kind of know how each one ticks, and we bonded pretty quickly in the fact that we live in a world of sarcasm. And yeah, for me personally, that's how it started. Even to all these years later, he still would joke that like I didn't like him at first, and I could not tell you if that's accurate or not.
But it's something that stayed with him, and he liked to tease you about it. That says a
Oh
lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we teased each other. Yeah, that's how you know that we like you.
Definitely.
I mean, Victoria is probably like, because Victoria caught it more than anybody.
Oh yeah. And that, I think that was also part of, that's like the prime example of, if we like you, we're going to tease you. And, you just got to stick through it a little bit, and not be afraid to dish it out. Although I could never give it back as well as Kyle and Naps could.
Mm.
Yeah, we used to. Matt had Matt obviously had so many impressions. He was so good at a variety of impressions. Arguably his best, or one of his best, was basically the entire Family Guy cast.
Mm.
I feel like he was like, it's shocking he's not related to Seth MacFarlane. Um, but we used to call Victoria Meg all the time. We used to do it on morning show together too.
Oh man.
Meg's one of the daughter on Family Guy, and he would do it in the Peter voice, the Stewie voice. He'd be all over it. So, yeah.
Explaining that one to my parents was a rough one. Why do they call you that?
Yeah, but ironically, on like the morning show, my parents, my grandma in particular, like, oh yeah, like you guys are friends and you're really close to Victoria. I'm like, oh, how do you know? Like, well, you treat her like your sister, and you could tell how you both talk to her like it's the same. Like,
Mm.
yeah, you're spot on.
Wow. Wow. So, Ryan, when you joined the station, Matt and these guys were already upperclassmen. So, what was your, take on Matt when you first met him as you were joining the station?
Well, funny enough, I think, and I could be wrong about this, but I think the first way that I interacted with Matt was actually through the morning show with the two of these guys as well.
Oh boy.
Because so I went into the training class in the fall semester of my freshman year. Ended up coming out of the training class in the spring, and starting to work with the sports department. And as part of that, you would do a update shift every other week on morning show or on Newsline. And most often for the youngest guys in the department, that meant morning show, because it's college, nobody wants to get up early, so make the young guys do it, which is totally fair. So I came in to a group of friends. You just heard Kyle and Victoria both talk about the chemistry that they had on that show, and immediately was inundated with John Mayer jokes.
Mm.
Again, as a sign of, I think, them liking me at the time. And that was my first introduction to Matt, and it really only kind of grew from there as he came back to work with us more in the sports department. And Yeah, it was just always an easy friendship, because I think, going back to what Kyle had said earlier, he could talk across a variety of topics. So while sports
Mhm.
was kind of a baseline for a lot of us, and all three of us here on this call, there were so many different topics that you could talk to him about, and that's what made it so easy to grow to like him, grow to know him, and then once you were in with him, you were pretty much in for life. So yeah, that was the first impression that I really had, was coming in freshman, not really knowing what to expect, and then I think either both Kyle and Matt at various points threw to me with a litany of different John Mayer references, trying to get me to break during the course of the updates.
Classic. I love it.
It was pretty. It was a lot. we Matt and I would pull up. I don't think Spotify was around at the time,
No, it
so I think
wasn't.
we would pull up the Ryan Mayer iTunes page and just figure out
John Mayer.
how to incorporate Ryan Mayer's song, or excuse me, John Mayer's song. See, there you go. Into how he threw to him, and also we liked to bring on the news person and the sports person to just give them some time on air to just talk,
Mm.
just more than just their updates. And uh Ryan's would just turn into us trying to figure out how we can incorporate these songs into talking to him.
That's great. That's great. Talking to so many people over different generations at Hofstra Radio, there always seem to be people who go out of their way to make people feel comfortable. Whether you're new at the station or you're trying something different, there's someone who's got the kind of personality that draws people in and makes introductions. Was Matt that kind of person?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
He I don't know if I've ever met anybody else like it, where he, and as we kind of talked about how versatile he was as a person, obviously his bread and butter was jokes.
Mm.
Um, and he could make you feel very calm and accepted and at home with a joke. Not necessarily like just in general. I mean, he would just fire it off. He was so quick witted.
Hmm.
Um, and he would just indoctrinate you into the group, so to speak, and make you feel calm, because especially in the beginning, it can be a lot.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but if that wasn't your bag, so to speak, like if that didn't work, like he also knew how to like take you aside and talk one on one, and kind of knew what made you tick. Um, because I know he ended up being on the EB, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was one of our program directors, I think.
So and I know that was like big for him, is like just kind of with people who are stressed or nervous. Like I think he was the go-to in that group. So yeah, I mean it all across the board, I would say.
Mm. I always like to ask in one-on-one interviews about stories that, for the person I'm talking to, kind of defines their time, or something that is a solid memory that they keep with them. Victoria, I don't if it's okay if I could start with you. Were
Yeah.
there any stories about Matt or his time at Hofstra that stand out to you that say this is the kind of person he was?
Oh, the one that I always think of really fondly, it's not the most emblematic of all of the great things he's done, but I always chuckle about it all of these years later. We were doing morning show together one year, over the summer one year, and it's summer, so there's no students around, and the building is pretty empty. And we had noticed towards the end of the morning show that there was like a small group of adults just watching us do morning show, which is not a typical thing at all. And we wrap the show and walk out, and it was apparently some group of people from Canada that were walking around, I guess, getting a tour of Hofstra for whatever reason, and they said that they really loved our show, and as like a token of their gratitude, gave me and Naps Canadian flag pins, and Yeah. And from then on out, Naps and I would always joke with each other that we were huge in Canada, which is just like a silly little thing. But like every time we, would pass, like I live in DC, so like passing like the Canadian embassy, I'd be like, oh look, we're big in Canada,
Right.
and it was just like a truly like a decade long running joke between the two of us.
That's awesome. That's cool. Thank you for sharing that. Kyle, is there any story that stands out in your memory that says this is who Matt was?
uh, yeah, I feel like we could go on for 4 hours
We
about
could.
this. The one that always comes to mind, it was summer of 2010. And as Victoria said, summer is kind of a little more like there's more opportunity to get on air. There's less going on. So and that can be both challenging and also allows for maybe you to try some things and be creative. And he at this point was producing Newsline. He might have been, I think he was the assistant news producer at this point. And I always loved doing his Newsline. So Ryan mentioned earlier, uh, in the sports department at that time, you either had to do an update shift for the morning show or an update shift for Newsline. And typically the uh, newbies would do the morning show because as college students you don't want to wake up at 6 in the morning. And so I like doing his Newsline though, because we at this point I don't think he originally started in the sports department and then took a brief sabbatical from sports and joined news and did morning show. And he was getting a ton more free flowing on air opportunities and really became one of the best on air talents in the station. But then he was also producing, and he still, though, because he was friends with all the sports department, understood kind of how we worked. And so for him, I'd walk into the main office. He'd be at his little area, and he'd be like, "Kyle, give me 3 minutes," or "Hey, I need 6 out of you today." Like, okay, just give me time, and I'll do it. And so in this particular day, um, it was, I think it was a Thursday. It was Thursday or Friday. We were going to a Dave Matthews concert that weekend. And so he was like, "Oh, give me 5." And then, I was like, I always like to try to be creative, especially in the summer. And so I'm like, I'm gonna work in some Dave Matthews references, some Dave Matthews songs, and you have to guess them. You have to find them, because he would be in the studio listening. And so that's what ended up happening. However, as soon as the show's about to start, in walks Ed Engels. And then we got nervous. Like, okay, so with this, we're being creative. How's this gonna go over? Um, and so we both like looked at each other, and I'm like, well, I mean, I can't just rewrite my script in 30 seconds. I have to do it. So I did it. He got, I think I put 10 in my update, and I think he got 9 of them. And I'm like, okay. And then he held a post-mortem, kind of like a little meeting after the show to just kind of give some critiques and his thoughts on the show. And he's going through and helping out the news anchors at the time. This is Ed. And he turns to me, he goes, "Kyle," and like Matt and I held our breath. He said, "Your writing has gotten really good. That was an incredibly creative update." And like the look of shock on our face, and like obviously that also speaks to how awesome Ed was.
Right.
Um, But I'll never forget it. Like the sheer like panic because we don't know how this is gonna go over, and we did it, and like it landed, and Ed loved it because you did not want to disappoint Ed, and it was just like euphoria. It's like somehow we did it, right? Like we got out of it. But I think that was like a great example of Matt because like there was like he wanted to have fun. Obviously, like there's a line, but he wanted to like lighten things up and make sure that this is still like you want to enjoy your time doing this and have fun, be creative as well. And I honestly don't think I could have done that with anyone else producing the show. So yeah, a perfect example of how he was within the station.
That's great stuff. So it's not just about him or his performance. It's about what the team is doing, what everybody can do, and making the whole thing better.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Him and I kind of bonded over that because at that time I was the assistant sports director. He was the assistant news director. He was producing Newsline. And I think he was maybe like kind of maybe a main host on a morning show. And I was producing Locker Room and, also helping out with other sports shows and the live broadcasts. And it was more about the team, the group than the individual. And he definitely cared about that. And like the news department at that time under him, Veronica Kennedy, Sam Manning, Dennis Foley, that group like really grew the news department. And I think Matt definitely played a huge part in that.
Thanks for sharing all that, Ryan. Other than the gentle hazing with the morning show, what stands out to you about Matt? Are there stories that say this is who this guy was?
Yeah, funny enough, I'm realizing that all three of our stories involve the summer, which is a little bit odd given how much time we spent in the station during the school year. But
Yeah.
I guess that's because, we never left the station at any point in time during the year. But mine also comes over the summer. It wasn't that summer that Kyle was talking about, but actually the following one. And Matt had come back to the sports department at this point in time. And, we had become more friendly from him being back in the sports department and kind of working around each other, but we didn't quite fully know each other yet. And we were assigned to go and do a Long Island Ducks broadcast. And at the time, I want to say that was like Sundays or something like that. In the summer, we would do the radio broadcast. And so we were driving out. I'm from Pennsylvania originally. I don't know anything about Long Island. We're driving out to Suffolk, and I'm trying to find my way to this ballpark, just listening to music. And a particularly early 2000s rap song came on shuffle on my iPod, and without even looking at each other, without even saying anything, we both just burst out singing along to this particular song. And it was one of those like step brothers, are we best friends now kind of situations, because it just was that moment of like, oh, okay, we have this in common too, in addition to sports. And it goes back to the versatility that we were talking about earlier. Like Kyle's talking about, they were going to a Dave Matthews concert that weekend, right? This particular song is from Ludacris, and he was so wide ranging in his interests, in his ability to connect with people, and it made you feel more comfortable. And we went from, two people that had worked in the sports department, we knew each other, we had joked around before in the station, but hadn't really gotten to know each other that well. And by the time we got to the park for this broadcast, it was like we had been friends for 5-10 years. And I think that really kind of speaks to the person that Matt was, and the influence that he had in the radio station, because he could make you feel so comfortable in just an instant moment. And that's the one that always sticks out to me, to be honest with you. And both Kyle and Victoria have heard this story before, because it's the one I always tell when people ask how Matt and I became friends. So it's one of those that just, to me, will always stick out when I think about him, because it shows off so many different facets of the person that he was, in the ability to make people comfortable, the versatility that he had, and just building bridges in a way that made the station, I think, overall a better place.
Hmm. It sounds like he could find a common interest and make that the link for friendship. It sounds like for a large group of people.
Oh yeah, without a question. And I mean, I think that has been seen in the years since, just with the sheer number of people that he still kept in touch with from Hofstra. You know, after you leave, there's core groups of people that you generally stay in touch with, and some of the ones over the years tend to, just fall out of communication. But Matt was always a guy that, he'd be like, "Oh, you know who I talked to the other day," and then bring a name from the past that I hadn't had the chance to interact with in 2-3 years.
Hmm.
And that's just the type of guy that he was.
Hmm.
Uh,
Go ahead, Kyle.
oh, I was gonna say, I'll give you another example of his wide range of interests and topics. My wife, who was also in the station, Christine, at the time, Christine Newman, um, they bonded over RuPaul's Drag Race.
Hmm.
So I mean, you're seeing the, like, how does this all make sense? It didn't, but that was the beauty of it.
Hmm.
Yep.
You've mentioned that Matt worked in a number of different departments. He was doing the morning show, he was doing news, he was doing sports, he's a program director. Were there times, some people come into the station and they're like, I want to do this or I want to do that. And some people show up and they have no idea and they sort of find their way. Do they want to continue in radio or broadcasting as a career? Did you guys ever talk to Matt about career goals while you were at the station? Did he ever say, I want to do this in the future, or was it kind of wide open?
Man, I mean, from my perspective, he had a wide range of things he wanted to do. I mean, I know he wanted to do comedy. He loved SNL, but yeah, I mean, he started out in sports and then did news and morning shows simultaneously.
Mm.
And then that summer of 2010, he came to me and asked if he could come back into the sports department, and we needed somebody that at that time, especially in the summer, um, that could kind of pick up shows and pick up shifts. So then he just became a full fledged member again of the sports department, and so I think, I don't know. I mean, Ryan, Victoria, maybe you had different conversations, but for me, it was like it was wide open, but he had like a ton of different goals, I guess.
Mm,
Yeah, I think his goal was he just wanted to be working in broadcasting. It was
Yep.
just a full passion of his, and it didn't matter if it was putting together a killer entertainment report for Newsline, or doing, a fun interview on morning show, or going to big sporting events, whether it was Belmont Stakes, which he did at WRHU, or, I know he later went to a Super Bowl after he graduated. Uh, the goal was always to just be working in broadcasting. And it didn't matter where it was, or what the shift was. He was going to do it and take it on. And he did that for sure.
Yeah, I think the thing that it always came down to for him was a love of journalism. At the end of the day, like the he wanted to broadcast in whatever form that he could, and no matter what part of the field that meant, he was going to go out and do it. I had mentioned earlier that at one point he was doing a full-time job in insurance, and on the side on weekends was working part-time freelance radio shifts to put himself back in the position where he could be full-time broadcasting. And then 2 years later he got that opportunity, and that was the biggest thing, was always just finding that way to continue to pursue what he loved from the time that I first met him, and continued on throughout all the years that we were friends.
mm. For so many people starting off in the broadcasting field after college or at a young age, so much of it is about the hustle and making connections and saying yes to opportunities and shifts. And sure, I'll do that. And it kind of sounds like that was Matt's way of thinking about getting into the business.
100%.
You guys all stayed friends after college, and you've mentioned this several times, and that time in college is usually super intense and has these memories that you're talking about. But are there other things that you remember about your friendship with Matt that are favorite stories you wouldn't mind sharing?
Yeah, so like after college, for me personally, it was so much, we'll say, non-broadcasting related. Um, I'll just kind of go on a brief tangent here. You know, right after his passing, and obviously, all of the stories and sites that picked up the story, it was crazy and a little overwhelming at first,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was like, wow, he accomplished so much, and that wasn't what our friendship was about. For me, our friendship was about I don't want to say real life, but you know what I mean, like
Hmm.
actual
Yeah.
life things. Weddings, kids. I said this after he passed. Like, he was one of the first people I told that I was going to be a dad, and he immediately started crying, and then of course I started crying, and you know obviously, his husband Ricky, I was in his wedding, so was Brian and Victoria. He was in mine. I will say, one of my favorite stories in general with Naps, and it's top 3 life regrets for me personally. I decided to like do a little like thing to ask each one of my groomsmen to be in my wedding, and I had a little box, and it was adorable. And so obviously I had one from Matt, and I was planning to do it. I think like it was like a year before my wedding. A couple months prior though, I had already known he was going to be in my wedding, and Victoria at that time had moved from New York down to Baltimore.
Hmm.
And we just decided to do something, with her, and so she she came up to where I live, which is Hershey, Pennsylvania, and
Which is
we
a
met
really
up
quick
with,
drive.
yeah, shockingly short.
Yeah.
And we met up with our friend, another former WRHU member, Jackie DeTore, who she lives near me now. And Matt decided to surprise her, and like by taking a train from New York to Hershey to visit. Uh, and so she had no idea this was coming. And so we picked Matt up at the train station, and she's in the front seat, and she goes, I told Victoria at the time that I was picking up my wife, which was a complete lie. And she was picking up Matt, and she goes, "That looks like Matt." Holy expletive! That is Matt. Um, and so we picked Matt out, and then we went to Hershey Park, because that's what you do right here in
Mm.
Hershey, or eat chocolate. Um, so my favorite ride at Hershey Park is the Great Bear. Um, so that's what we did first. And Matt is not the biggest fan of roller coasters. That's putting it lightly.
Mm. Hmm.
Um, I bullied him into getting on with us. Not only did I do that, I bullied him into waiting in the longer line to ride in the front. and it was like a 4-seater, so the 4 of us were all together. And I told him that there was 1 loop and 1 twisty, where you kind of like you twist around, you go upside down. There was 1 loop and 1 twisty, but I left out that there were 2 extra loops and 1 other twisty. So we ended up going on it, and he literally the entire time was screaming at me, telling me he hates me, he regrets being my friend, and I hurt my back so much it hurts to this day by laughing so hard on this roller coaster. I led this off by saying that it's one of my biggest regrets, because what I should have did, and my friend Jackie DeTore brought this up as we got off. I should have, as we're, typical roller coaster, you're kind of going up and it's real slow. I should have leaned over to him and said, "Oh, by the way, there's actually 3 loops and 2 twisties. And hey, will you be in my wedding?" And then we're off. That's what I should have did, and it would have been perfect, incredible. Yeah, and we have a picture of the 4 of us, maybe 5 minutes after this roller coaster, and that looks like somebody who has been on a roller coaster that doesn't like roller coasters, to say the least. The 3 of us are smiling, and Matt's got sunglasses on, and obviously, like, listen, he was a great sport about it. But yeah, I tell the story all the time because it's truly a life regret. I wish I would have done it. I knew as I'm getting off the roller coaster, that's what I should have done. One of my favorite nap stories.
Well, I didn't know Matt, but on behalf of people who don't like roller coasters all across the world, I will carry a grudge on his behalf as long as I can.
I don't know if he's ridden a roller coaster since.
Yeah, I could see that being the last one. Be like, that's it. I'm done. No more. Wow.
He
That's
didn't
a
get
great
on
story.
one for the rest of the day. He stayed on the ground.
Yeah. And I think this might have been also the same day. So he was on, obviously he was on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. He did Wheel of Fortune, and he did Jeopardy. And when he was on Wheel of Fortune, I mean, to say he crushed it is an understatement. But he did not get the final puzzle.
Yep.
And the final puzzle was Browsing the Aisles. And I made him rewatch it about 20 times. I saved it on my DVR. It was on my DVR for years. His Jeopardy is still on my DVR. Yeah, that was truly, and don't get me wrong, he has crushed me on several occasions. He made a joke that was pretty rough on my wedding, that like it's with the whole wedding arena. He mentioned so I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, and he mentioned that I need to get a VCR because that's the last time the Cowboys were good. And told that joke in front of about 200 people. So that was, he was also like a roast master general. He was so good at it. We mentioned it, like, he's so quick, so funny. So yeah.
Wow. Ryan, is there a story that came after Hofstra that you wouldn't mind sharing about Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's so many, because Matt and I actually ended up living together for 5 years in Astoria in Queens. in several apartments, and then ended up down the street from each other before I ended up moving out of the state to New Jersey. But I think the one that actually stands out to me over the course of time is when I first got out of school. I, as we mentioned earlier, was doing anything I could to get into broadcasting. So I ended up in a small town in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, Marquette, Michigan. It's where Northern Michigan University is, and I was working at a radio station there and doing a daily talk show, and obviously didn't know anybody in the area. And Matt made the trip out there multiple times. But the one that is the most memorable is actually when I was packing up to come back, because I had gotten a job in New York. And so I was making the trip back to the East Coast. And he flew out to help me pack up the apartment, put everything into a U-Haul, and then drive my car while I drove the U-Haul the 18 hours back from Michigan to Pennsylvania. Which shows you A, the kind of friend that he was, and B, that I owed him a whole heck of a lot more than I was ever able to give him in the coming years afterwards. But that night was actually the Super Bowl. And so we ended up just going to a local Buffalo Wild Wings, as you can imagine, small town. That's like the um, go to wing spot in the area, and just sitting there for hours talking, laughing um, through the Super Bowl. And I think that was one of the times that really, for me, just continued to cement that friendship um, that carried on throughout so many years afterwards. And it just sticks out in my mind because I can remember vividly thinking, I cannot believe this man is flying out here for the third time to Marquette, Michigan, to come and not only just like say hi, hey, how are you, but pack up my apartment and all the crap that was in it into a U-Haul and help me drive it back halfway across the country. Like I just, it blows my mind still to this day that he would make that kind of effort and that kind of, I mean, sacrifice of time and money in that in that way. And it just is one of those things that I will always carry with me, because there were so many just laughs had during the course of that trip back and during the course of the night as we celebrated me coming back to the East Coast. So yeah, that's the one that stands out the most to me.
Wow. Yeah, that's friendship and dedication there. That's above and beyond. Wow.
Yep.
I
Wow.
think a lot of people, like, they, especially like when you graduate college, right? You say like, oh yeah, let me know, call me, I'll drop whatever I'm doing and I'll help you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Matt backed it up. Matt did it.
Oh yeah.
He did it for, I mean, truly one of the people that you could rely on. And even though he lived in New York, and as Ryan mentioned, at times in Michigan, I'm in Pennsylvania, Victoria is, now in Virginia. If we needed him, he was there.
Yeah.
Victoria, is there something that stands out for you in your post Hofstra friendship with Matt?
Yeah. Kyle mentioned how well Matt did on Wheel of Fortune, and one of the prizes he walked away with on Wheel of Fortune was a trip to St. Lucia. And originally Matt wanted to give it away to his parents, because his parents had a milestone anniversary that year. And I guess the rules of Wheel of Fortune is you can't really give the trip to somebody if it's like in your name. It's pretty much in your name already, and you got to go and you got to find somebody. So I wound up going to St. Lucia and reaping those rewards of my friend being great on television. And we fly into St. Lucia, and I like some adventure, and I like going on hikes. So I from the plane, I pointed out, I was like, oh, I want to hike that mountain. It's like the big iconic mountain of St. Lucia that's like everywhere. And he's like, yeah, right. Yeah, right. And he didn't believe me. And he's like, oh, you're just going to take me to like a smaller mountain. And so we get there and he's like, oh no, you were serious. I was like, yeah, of course I was serious. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. And we get like halfway up the mountain and the tour guide has just been mocking and bullying him the whole time. And was just like, oh, you're a real city boy, aren't you? And just like, we had to like climb back down the mountain. I couldn't subject him to that anymore. Uh, I couldn't let him be bullied by a tour guide. But I think, that trip really speaks to how selfless Matt could be, because, he had these great 15 minutes of fame and, won this incredible trip. And his knee jerk reaction was, I'm going to give it to my parents. But it was such a fun trip. And I think another really great, poignant moment was speaking to what Ryan said about Matt would be there and drop everything and be there to support you, and backed it up, and wasn't just text me if you need anything kind of person. When I got married a few years ago, I know I wanted to have somebody officiate it, and wanted to do it in a sentimental place. And the only person in my mind that could do it justice was to have Matt officiate the wedding, because he was the first person I told my husband about. I was like, hey, I'm dating this guy. I hope it works out. And he goes, yeah, this will work. Just like have faith. So he was the first person who knew. So it made sense for him to officiate. And I have never seen him more serious in my entire life. He took it so seriously. He scheduled Zoom meetings with us to talk about our relationship. I was like, you've witnessed it. You can write the whole thing. He sent multiple drafts and he took the whole thing so seriously. And I think it really spoke volumes to how much he really cares about the people in his community and in his extended family. I know I think it was Kyle or Ryan, I can't remember which, was telling me they tried to crack a joke to Matt right before the ceremony, and Matt was like, no, I can't do it. Please don't make me laugh. Like, I think that really speaks a lot to the softer, more sentimental side of Matt.
Yeah, I remember it was one of the few times in my life where I showed up early for something was your wedding.
Thank you.
And yeah, well, yeah. And yeah, and him and I were just kind of sitting there because he was Victoria's service was outside, and they were taking some photos beforehand, and so he's standing there, and he had told me, he's like, I'm terrified, I'm nervous. I'm like, and I look at him like, what? Like you're on air. You have been on Fox News. Like, you've covered the Super Bowl, but that truly showed how he recognized the gravity of the situation. He adored Victoria, and this was the biggest day of her life. And he's running the show. And he fully grasped that situation and fully understood the honor that was placed upon him. And she's 100% right. That was one of the most nervous he's ever been. Probably until his wedding. So, yeah, I could definitely vouch. And it probably was me that tried to like make a joke to lighten it up for him. And he just like couldn't do it.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all those stories and just the generosity and the kindness and the humor. And as you're saying all these things, I think, when did this guy sleep? It seemed like he was always busy, always doing stuff.
Yeah.
He ran on Duncan, as much of America does. But no, in all seriousness, he was a night owl, and I think it at the same time he would still be up shortly after I was, and I'm very much a morning person. So when we were living together, I'd be up getting ready to go to the gym or go do chores or whatever the case was at like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. I come out and he's sitting there on the couch with an iced coffee from Dunkin' in hand and catching up on the news or what happened last night in sports. I mean, it. We're joking a little bit that he didn't sleep, but yeah, I mean, to some extent, yeah, he slept, when he could, but it was mostly, something where he just loved everything that he was doing each and every day, and he never like came across in that sort of I'm not getting enough sleep way. He was just kind of like, yeah, all right, let's go get a coffee, and just kind of kept on going through it. And yeah, I mean, it's always amazed me, just how he was able to keep doing everything that he was doing, on a day to day, week to week basis.
He was always down, right, to
Oh
do
yeah,
stuff.
Yeah.
always,
Like
always.
even if it wasn't in his wheelhouse, he's like, yeah, like it was because it was more about the camaraderie.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
I'll just quickly, if you don't mind, Brian, just go. We'll take you back to college. Him and I led the student section for the men's basketball team my senior year.
Mm.
Um, this just so just I think it was yesterday or the other day, was the anniversary of a Charles Jenkins game-winning basket,
Mm.
and it was a game-winning three. It was like 3 seconds left, and in the video, and Hofstra, reposted the video, and in the video, guess what? There's Matt and I front and center losing our mind, and yeah, we never missed it, and we always just we led the chants. We led at that time. We did a clap, a slow clap out of every break. It was him and I, and we didn't even like. There's so many stories. I mean, we went to the conference tournament down in Richmond. Victoria was with us, and he was just
Yes.
like, "Yeah, I'm going." Um, so many times like it was just always like, yeah, like I know like a bunch of us, I ended up not going, but a bunch of my roommates, like they went to Disney for spring break the one year, and like as I say, he's not a big amusement park person, but he went because of the camaraderie and friendship, and he was just always down to do it. And when I think back of so many of my college memories, he's there,
Mm-hmm.
he's in them. um so it's obviously these last couple of months I've been doing a lot of reflecting, and just so many memories kind of come back, and it's like, wow, he was there for that, and he was there for, he was at, oh, he was at this concert, and he was at that concert, and oh, when I had this accomplishment, he was there. um yeah, he was just I mean, I'm speaking for me personally, he was just always there, always involved in it, even post college. Always involved with everything that I had going.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Picking up from what Kyle's saying there. I mean, I talked about the fact that we ended up living together in Astoria, along with, another one of the folks from, WRHU, Brian Parker, and it didn't matter what day, it didn't matter what the time was. No matter what, if I needed to just blow off steam and get away from like the stress of work or whatever the case was, he was like, all right, let's go. Where are we going?
Yeah.
And just no matter what, he was always ready to do that, and always ready, to pick you up, to knock you down a few pegs when you were feeling yourself a little bit too much, and just overall, uh, just always down for whatever the situation required.
It might be unfair to ask because it's hard to know what someone else is thinking, but you guys were all close with Matt for a long time. Can you give us an idea of how important Hofstra Radio was to him?
It's huge.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
incredibly important. It was everything. I think Ryan said it earlier, we never left the building
Hmm.
at Hofstra. It could be, I know we've been snowed in at Hofstra. It's
Yep.
been, a beautiful sunny day in the summer, and we're like, no, we want to do a broadcast with our friends. Um, to, you know, running out of class to make your time slot on air. You know, it meant so much to Matt just because it was his passion, and it came with this excellent extended family, um, where we could all lean on each other and pick each other up. And so much of what Kyle and Ryan just said of him being down and always willing to do it for the story and do it for the bit, and build some really great friendships along the way. I think it really meant everything to him.
Yeah, I think I mean, just think about it. His last 2 years, he did news, he did sports, and I mean, he wasn't just a quasi member. I mean, Ryan could speak more to it because I was graduated by then, but he was doing broadcasts. He was hosting shows
Yep.
for the sports department. He did morning show. I mean, think about how many hours that is, and also like Victoria mentioned the camaraderie. The you know at the time, listen, we're all 20 to 22 year old. Some of us were 18. We all go through things, especially in college, and as you're seniors, you're there's a lot of anxiety about life, and you have your good days and your bad days, and you have to we were lucky, and not to say that we were any different from other groups that came through WRHU, but there was a large group of us that had a real close bond that we all leaned on each other to pick each other up, and you know whether that was like through jokes or serious discussions, or having somebody cry on your shoulder. That was to me like it was normal, and he was a major part of that, and I think he commuted, so I mean he truly like lived there.
Yep.
And he would stay, so I had a house off campus, and it was a group of, and Brian, I'll spare you some of the details, but let's
Uh-huh.
just say my mom did not love the look and smell of the house. It was 7 guys.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Say
Um,
no more.
and 6 of us were in WRHU, and then there was a couple people that were just always there and maybe sleeping on the couch. And I think Naps slept on the couch more than anybody,
Yeah.
um, because I mean, just he'd be there for a morning show at 5 a.m. and then he'd stay until a basketball broadcast, which got out at 10:30 at night. Um, so yeah, it was really important to him, and I think I saw it too. He would always help out with future classes, and I know
Yep.
he helped a lot of young folks that came into WRHU after him, especially once he got his role at Fox.
Yeah, that was the other key thing as well in terms of how important it was to him is helping out that next generation for sure. There wasn't a time over the course of his time at WRHU and then afterwards where he wouldn't stop and talk to somebody. No matter who it was, whether it was, a kid that was just coming through for a tour of the station that hadn't even decided to come to Hofstra yet, or somebody that was fresh out of the training class and trying to figure out their way through the station. He always made time for everybody that came after him. And I think that showed the importance and how much he loved it, because not everybody is willing to keep open that network in that way. Not everybody is as willing to reach back to the generations after them and continue to help them move forward. And Matt always was, no matter where he was, no matter what he was doing, he was always trying to make connections for people, especially from that WRHU background. And it continued on throughout the course of his career.
This has been such a lovely and loving tribute to your friend who, by all accounts, it seems like lived a very rich and full life. It's a life well lived. I think is fair to say, and I'm grateful and honored that all of you would take the time to share these stories and help us get to know Matt a little bit. I'm really so grateful and pleased to be able to host this forum. Before we kind of wrap up here, we mentioned before we started recording that there's something about the Lupus Research Alliance, and I was wondering if you guys wouldn't mind talking a little bit about that and what that means in relation to Matt.
Yeah, for sure. So Matt was always battling with lupus throughout the course of his life. And um, one of the things that, if you knew Matt, or if you have listened to this episode and just heard all of the stories, is that he was always generous with his time and generous with his outreach to people. And I think if there's anybody out there that is interested in trying to do something for Matt, the place to do it is, as Brian mentioned, the Lupus Research Alliance, to continue to raise money for the continued research into treatment options for the disease going forward.
I'll post some information if you guys send me a link. I'll put it when we publish this episode. I'm sure people will definitely take some time and look into it and see if something can be done. Again, I can't say thank you enough for sharing these stories, Victoria and Kyle and Ryan. This is very generous of you, and I realize not that much time has gone on, and I know it's a tough thing, but the joy and the fun in all these stories and your recollections is just it's so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, we could go on for hours,
Yeah.
anytime, and I feel confident in speaking for both Ryan and Victoria here. Anytime we get the chance to talk about our friend, someone who we were incredibly proud of,
Yep.
um, professionally and personally, is just a joy on our end, and we appreciate you, giving us this opportunity to talk about Matt, um, and what he meant to us.
Yeah. Seconded. Thank you so much for having us on to talk about Matt. It really means a lot.
Yeah, it's been a huge blessing, and good to laugh and relive some of these memories that we had with our really, really good friend.